Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do my part 2 video on the tarot cards, just a basic overview and how I use tarot cards to practice my intuition and how I use them. If you are a practicing tarot reader and you're very much into numbers and the different minor arcanas, what they mean and things like that, then this video will not be for you because that is not how I use my cards. So just giving a heads up on that. So without further ado, let's go into it. So as we all know, tarot has had a very, has been associated for a very long time with witchcraft and fortune telling. A lot of people believe it's evil, it's bad, it's not good. But that wasn't really the purpose of tarot cards. Tarot cards are basically a tool to be used for self-realization. It's a tool for self-enlightenment. I, for one, do not use the cards to tell the future. I believe that our future changes. We have the ability to change it. I believe that when we have a crossroad in our life, it's kind of like the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I don't know how many of you remember those, or you may not even remember them. But basically, Choose Your Own Adventure books where you would read a page, and the bottom of the page, it would say, you had a choice: feed the alligator, turn to page 53, run from the alligator, turn to page 62. And if you chose to feed the alligator, turn to page 53, and chances are you probably got eaten, who knows. But that's how I view life. We are given different paths. We get to a fork in the road, and our guides can nudge us in the right in the direction that would be the easiest for us to go, but sometimes we don't pay attention to those nudges and we decide to go the other direction. And I find that neither direction is bad. It's just a lesson to learn, and generally it just takes longer. That's all. There is no such thing as a right or wrong decision. There may be lessons that are taught, but that's what I believe happens when people go to people to have a tarot reading, and they'll be like, 6 months later, they'll be like, well, that never happened. She's a fake. He's a fraud, whatever. That never happened. They said this and this and this was going to happen. Well, who's to say that you didn't walk out that door and 2 hours later made a decision that changed everything that woman or the tarot reader saw? So that is why, if you had stayed on course, that may have been your path. What they told you was going to happen, but you made the decision 2 hours after you left to do this other's decision. To me, the future is based on exactly what you're doing in that moment. Okay, and that is why you get times where people tell you something and then it doesn't happen. It's because you've made a decision that cascaded and rippled effect into the future, is what I believe. So that's why I don't look into the future. When I have the gift to look into the future, I don't use it. I choose not to, just because of that very reason. And also, that's not how I use my tarot cards. So I did look up a little bit of the history on it before I did this video, and it was actually kind of interesting. Just that, tarot cards began around the 15th century, but they were more playing cards. They weren't really what we would call fortune reading or whatever. They didn't gain popularity until the late 16th, early 17th century. And originally the tarot cards were called, I'm going to butcher this, Trionfi, Trionfi. At that time, it was a 70-deck card game that was inspired by the different theatrical theater festivals that were roaming around Europe at the time, mostly in Italy. Eventually, the triophany would evolve into the word tarot, and the word tarot originated in France. So, and by 1780s, people in France started assigning divination meanings to their decks. And then in 1789, a person named Aliette produced a new deck of cards, a 78 deck of cards, tarot cards, solely for the supernatural use. And that is what most majority of our cards are based on today, is the 78 cards. I do own a few decks where the author of the decks have decided to add a few of their own cards to the deck, so you may find that also, or they may have taken out a few cards. It's not normally seen that they've taken out cards, just sometimes you'll come across a deck they might have added 2 extra cards or extra 3 cards. I do have a deck, I believe, it actually has blank cards in it, which is interesting. So anyway, but and also at that time when the 78 cards, the standard, I guess you could call it standardization, I guess, they developed the major arcana and the minor arcana. So we'll go over that in a few minutes, what those are. But as we all know, the most popular edition of tarot is the Rider and Waite, and that was actually created in 1909. An interesting little fact, that is the deck of cards that, if you've ever seen tarot, they're the older illustrated ones you see. Very typical, very simple illustrated, but with a lot of detail in the illustrations. The illustrator was actually a woman named Pamela Coleman Smith, and she illustrated the Rider and Waite deck, but unfortunately she did not get a dime. She did not get anything financially from that, nor did she get any notoriety from that deck. It all went to the publisher, Rider. So that is why it was called Rider and Waite, not Rider and Smith or Smith and Rider. So now, currently, you may come across where people are now changing that to give Pamela Smith the credit that she deserves, and you may find that it is called the Rider and Smith, the Waite and Smith, or the Smith and Waite decks. So that was a very interesting little tidbit. And then, interestingly enough, the tarot gained popularity. It wasn't until World War One. After World War One and the Spanish flu, that the tarot cards actually became popular in America. Something else interesting to note would be that it's funny how history repeats itself. Tarot cards have actually risen in popularity since 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. So it's interesting how history is kind of repeating itself, how the Spanish flu and all saw an increase in tarot cards in America, and now we just went through our other flu, and the tarot cards have gained popularity again. So just an interesting side note there. So let's go into it. So basically, when you get a deck of cards, they'll usually come, a typical box and all, and there's usually a little manual inside of the book on what all the cards mean. I'm going to use a Lightseer deck just to kind of go over this. This is a deck that I had a love-hate relationship with it. And when I say that, it's kind of like I immediately was drawn to, let me see, I was immediately drawn to, I'm sorry, I dropped the box lid, to the cover of these cards. And the reason for it is I use my cards intuitively. I look for things on the cards in the pictures. And what drew me was, I don't know if you can see the eyes. See how they're closed? But they're open. So that immediately piqued my interest in the cards. I wanted to see what else I could see in the deck. So that was why I bought it. In the beginning, I was kind of a little disappointed in it, but I kind of like a love-hate relationship. Every once in a while, I pull it again. There's a certain picture in there that my guides want me to see. So the message they want to send me is through one of these cards instead of another deck. But anyway, in your deck, again, we have the major and the minor arcanas. The major arcana is usually 22 cards. You have the Fool card, which starts off as 0, so basically 0 to 21, but a total of 22 cards. And the Fool, major arcana, is basically the story of the Fool. The Fool is generally depicted by, either falling off a cliff, or she's going backwards onto the, into the unknown, to the abyss. And basically, the major arcanas, each one of these represents the Fool's different events or lessons that they go through. They're major events. You have strength, you have the Lover's card, you have, let's see here, the Chariot. Usually Chariot for me means movement, that the person, there's a lot of movement going to happen in that person or my reading. You have the Hermit. That's usually, again, the Hermit's pretty easy to understand. It's time to sit alone, kind of regrouping yourself. You have the Wheel. The Wheel's a good card, just means that you're manifesting things. At least these are the meanings for me that generally happens in my readings for myself. Justice, you have the balance scales. Something's going to come to judgment. Something's going to be finally recognized. It could be good, it could be bad, but generally it's just letting you know that finally something's coming to balance. Hanged Man, Death, Rebirth, Temperance, the Devil, Tower. Okay, this is actually a beautiful Tower card in a way. Usually the Tower is represented by a massive structure falling to the ground, things like that. The Tower for me actually represents change. Something that some people identify the Tower as something bad. Tower just means to me that I finished something. I've come to a cycle in my life. I've learned the lesson. I don't need it anymore. Okay? So when you see the Tower card, don't freak out when you see it. It could just be you're done. You've closed that cycle, you've closed that chapter, and you're ready for something bigger. So then you have the Star, the Moon. The Sun is always a very beautiful card to get. It's always full of beautiful energy, good things, judgment, and then the World. So basically the Fool has learned all its lessons, and it is now, whatever the lesson was, it's completed, the journey has finished, and you're going to reap the rewards of whatever the journey was. Okay. So, also, if you say you do a 6-card spread, the book will also, usually there's a certain kind of layout that the author may suggest. You do not have to use it. I generally do not use the layouts that are given in the books. I usually just go by my own intuition and what my guides tell me to do. So, yeah, so I think that is, if you see, say you have, you draw 6 cards, and 4 of them are all these major arcanas. To me, that represents that there's significant changes on the horizon. I'm going to undergo, a lot of stuff. Be ready. Get ready, Denise. Strap your pants on. We're going in. They expect a lot of changes happening. So that's one thing that I know is how my guides use it for me. So if you see a lot of major arcanas in a reading, chances are that's, at least for me anyway, that's what that signifies. Next thing you have is that the minor arcanas are basically everyday experiences of what the Fool experiences. So you can have the wands, cups. You see the cup here. The wands are here. There's 6 of wands. This is actually represented not only as a wand, but also as beams of light. Okay. You have the swords. Generally, there'll be swords. In this deck, they use crows to represent swords. You have your pentacles. Here's the pentacle. And then again, the cups and stuff. So, when you The minor arcanas actually represent the different elements. Okay, so fire can be expressed through the suit of the wands. So in this case, let's see here, the wands, here's the wands, the light, okay. And wands is usually creativity, inspiration, passions, okay. Any kind of emotions is usually felt through the cups. Ace of Cups, here you go, here's the cup. Here's the Six of Cups, you have 6 cups going. And that's the emotions. Air is usually through the suit of swords, which here is represented by the crows. And swords are our ideas, how we communicate, how we think, okay? And then earth is manifested through the pentacles, through the deck, through the suit of pentacles, okay? So you have the 4 suits. And they basically, this is messages of physical security. Pentacles represent wealth, health, things like that, okay? Then you have, just like in a plain deck of cards, you have the page, the knight, the queen. You don't have a jack, but you have a page, a knight, a queen, and a king. And these are, for me, these are messengers, okay? They are messengers of, pay attention to them. They are basically giving opinions on different situations. I don't know how to quite explain when I get the page. The page is usually like child. It's usually childlike things that come through, like play, things like that. So it's basically just in this book, they call it imagining the character speaking up in the middle of the reading. So, again, it's up to your own interpretation of it. But, yeah. So, if I was to intuitively read this deck, let me see if I can pull a few cards here. It would be quick and easy to show you. This one here, to me, might mean that if I was doing this as card, this is how I use my intuition. If I'm asking about a situation or I usually use my tarot cards to explain a story. Usually the tarots, for me, tell me a story. I can look at somebody's past and what has led them up to their present. And for me, if I was to read this card, I would be like, okay, you're being pulled in many, many different directions. And you're not quite sure what direction to go through. You've got the blindfold on, you've got the crows, you have all these, well, it's her hair, but to me, it represents strings. And if you think of time, I think it was in Greek mythology, the three women, when they cut the yarn of time or whatever. So that's what looks like it to me. So that's how I would read this card. This card, 6 of Wands, maybe some kind of recognition. You're going to get some recognition for something that you've done. Also, depending on, I might be drawn to the light. I always go to what the first thing I see on the card. Okay, this is how the cards work for me. I'll look at the first thing I'm drawn to is, say I'm drawn to the lights. Well, there's going to be some kind of awareness happening for me. If I was to read this card for someone, I might say, okay, you might be enlightened. There's some enlightenment coming your way. This one, I've gotten in a few readings. It's generally a lot of, if I do this reading on different people, it's inner child. This card to me represents inner child work. So if I get this in a reading, depending on, say someone's coming to me with a situation and they're just like, what do I need to do? If it's inner child work, generally I'll see this card. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got the child and then the full adult. So, and then the pathway. So whatever happened to that person, some kind of trauma or whatever happened to them, the bowls kind of lead down into the adult life. So that's probably the one, the easiest cards to show you how I would read the cards intuitively. So, okay. So that's that deck. I just want to show you real quick. I was trying to keep this video short. To show you a couple of different other cards for you. There's all different kinds of versions out there. If you don't like some of the cards, tarot cards can be kind of dark. If you're not into the dark and you prefer to use more of the light, you have the light seers. There's also the angels tarot cards. I use these a lot. Also, I use the good tarot a lot, and it's the same thing. The same 4 decks, the major arcana, minor arcana, very just with angelic drawings, beings instead, and the messages. Let's see here. I have this one's an interesting deck. A lot of times you will find where the creator of their deck decides to change the suits. A lot of times they take the liberty of changing, and in this deck specifically they do that. I believe it's called Jeopardize. I could be wrong in my pronunciation. But basically this deck actually uses, instead of the traditional suite, you see it here. Let me pull this for you here. It's a very interesting deck, actually. The author goes into a long story of how they created the deck in the book, and it's actually very interesting to read. But this one, actually, the swords and the jeopardize is winds, the wands in the traditional suit is fire, cups in the traditional suit is tides in this tarot, pentacles, they call them gardens. So just be aware. They also changed the court titles, jester, stranger, queen, and king. So that you may find that in some decks too, which can be sometimes gets a little confusing, especially when you're just starting out with tarot, trying to keep everything straight. Especially if you're involved, if you really want to dive deep into tarot, not use them as intuitively, just the pictures, but you want to get into the cups, you know, the pentacles and all those meanings of the different numbers too. And then this would kind of probably be a confusing deck for you if you were just starting out. Yeah, but another deck I have, which is a very interesting deck. This is Runic. I've had many past lifetimes in Norse, Scandinavia culture, in that area of the world anyway, and also as a Norse and a Viking in some of my past lifetimes. So I'm very drawn to this deck, and it's the Runic Tarot. So a lot of times you'll find tarot that will actually use other processes besides, you know, the cups and the queens and the pages and stuff, the major arcanas. This deck actually uses, not only does it use the major minor arcanas, but it also uses the runic system here too. So an example of that would be on this card, you would see the number 2. This is 2, I believe. Let's see, what is number 2? So it's 2 of wands, two. They might even call it staffs in this deck. But you'll see here where the runes are. And then what they do is they'll actually break it down in this book. They'll explain to you the images and then interpreting the runes down here. So it gives you kind of like 2 different interpretations of one card, which is very cool. When I'm stuck on something, I have messed around with these, and it's been really kind of scary how spot on they are. So a little more complicated, but definitely very cool deck. So before I finish this up, for those that are just beginning, I'm going to show you a deck that I have, which is great. This is just a cover, but I got these on Amazon. These are really nice, especially if you're just starting tarot, just beginning tarot. And basically they're a teaching deck. So very simple. Basically the cards, it tells you on the card what it means. So if you want to get into the practicing of the tarot, go into detail with the numbers and the pentacles, the cups, all that stuff. These cards are actually really good for that. By using them, I'm actually getting more and more understanding of the cards' meanings as how they're presented in the tarot versus just me using my intuition. So just a deck I picked up on Amazon. I think it was, I want to say $20 for it. And they go through. They also tell you what the inverse meaning is, you know, on the card too at the bottom. And how I use these cards is as you can tell, there's a lot of words on here, and some of them mean, you know, release of fear, repressing emotions, inner confusion, misinterpretation, darkness, insecurities. So what I do is I look at what the first word I see in there that draws my attention. Okay, so say it's inner confusion. Okay, the rest of it doesn't. Yeah, I wouldn't use the rest of it. I would just use the inner confusion. The first words that catch my attention. I kind of get like a little ding, ding, ding in my head when when I land on the correct word. I don't know how your guides work for you, but that's how mine work. A little note though, if you're just starting and you see a lot of cards in your spread that are reversed, upside down, don't freak out, okay? Usually they're just cards that our spirit or our guides want us to pay attention to. They're just trying to bring more attention to whatever the meaning of that card is. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. They just want you to pay more attention to it, to the meaning of that card. Generally, as far as spreads go, a lot of times, again, like I said earlier, how I use tarot is to tell a story. I'll use 3 cards in the beginning, you know, and it may tell me about a past. It may tell me how someone got up to a certain, sorry, it's kind of blurring on my camera here. And then I'll ask for, tell me more. Give me more information about this situation. You know, and then I'll shuffle again. And then I'll generally just pull 3 more cards. Sorry, my tripod's kind of in my way. And then I'll go on. Again, I don't tell futures using tarot. Again, I believe that can change. You know, it can change in 5 minutes depending on the decision you make. So I just basically do it to tell me a story. Usually the cards will tell me of a situation, of someone's life. Generally they'll go from like childhood. Usually ends up being like a 9-deck spread for me, 9 cards. It takes me from the childhood of the person all the way up until the now. And then when I get to the now, if I want more information, I'll say, can you give me some more information about such and such card? And then what'll happen is, and then I'll pull another card. And generally it gives me more information about the card I had in question. So, yeah, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. If anyone uses their deck differently, by all means, leave it in the comment section below to assist others. If you found this video to be helpful, please hit like. If you want some more of my videos, hit subscribe. I do Akashic record readings. If you are curious to know your life purpose or what your soul has, your purpose in life or where your soul comes from, just send me an email. My email is down below. If you want to share an experience that you had or you have any questions for me, my email's down below. Feel free to email me. If you'd like to share something, just mention the email you like to share it to the people. And yeah, if you have any comments on anything further that you'd like me to explain or talk about, that I can give you what resonates with me in this very confusing world that we're living in, yeah, just leave me a comment. And yeah, other than that, have a great day, guys.